Hey friends, Geo here. Thank you for stopping by my little channel. For those of you who don't know me, I write short, gay romance fiction and occasional gay long fiction for fun, and I turn it into soft-spoken ASMR. The dark is my attempt at science fiction. I design my videos so you can listen to them while you work on other projects, or relax in your favorite chair and enjoy. Enough rambling. What has gone before? Nuestra colony is very remote and very small, but it makes good food and great beer. Raiders have found their way into the system and destroyed a cargo hauler. Ian is off on a medical mission flying to the Smiling Mines. Rias is back on Nuestra and is called to help with a sabotaged airlock. The tech, Drendon, was working on the airlock control panel outside the dome when a massive electrical surge exploded and sent him flying. And now, the dark. South Dome, airlock. Rias. "Doc," I yelled. "Something happened to Drendon." I pushed Carla out of the way, got out one of my tools, and undid the hard lock. It took a minute Drendon didn't have. I went into the airlock, as did Doc and Emilio and Roldan. "Carla, hard-lock the airlock door once we're through. Be prepared to hard open when I give the signal," I said. "Datapad, medical emergency. I want a grav lift here immediately." The inner door slammed shut as Carla rewired it for hard lock behind us. The outer door refused to work. I had the panel open in seconds and looked inside. No AI, so it should work, but it didn't. That meant it had received a command from the AI operating this airlock. I removed the motherboard, bypassing the AI control, and connected two wires together, and hard opened the outer door. Drendon lay on the ground. Two of his friends were by his side. The other person was at the panel. The gravity was lighter out here, and I could move like I used to. "No time to be polite," I said, and pushed the man away from the panel. "Datapad, full schematics, display on my helmet." So many wires, easily double what an airlock door should have. "Emilio, beer's on you," I said, but didn't wait for his reply. With my datapad, I have found the wires that carried power. Cutting a live power feed was dangerous. It could result in either a bad shock, unconsciousness, or death. Maybe Drendon had touched a live feed? No, he's too experienced for that. The airlock had shot a focused electrical discharge at the man working on it. Was the AI trying to protect itself? No, it was trying to protect the airlock. I traced a couple of the extra wires to a spot at half a meter above the airlock panel. I pulled out the mid-range cutter and sliced a hole in it. "What are you doing?" Roldan said. The grav lift arrived, and Doc and two of the men lifted Drendon onto the grav lift. "Medical emergency," I said to my datapad. "Tell the onboard AI to take Doc and Drendon to medical by the fastest route available. I wouldn't trust this airlock until it's had a major overhaul." The grav lift sped off, but it had to go too far. It had to go around South Dome, through all the machinery out here, to the other airlock. I got back to work. "Carla, the AI is connected to a short-burst receiver. Somebody used the airlock to come inside Nuestra whenever they wanted, and Madre would erase any record of this airlock being used." "Why?" Roldan said. "Free beer," Carla said. "Emilio, I think this was booby-trapped. I suspect the AI electrified the panel to keep people from getting to it. I have two concerns," I said, my fingers flying through the wires and disconnecting the short-range receiver. I used the cutter and cut the receiver out of the airlock. What did Perlita and Tristan think was so special about this airlock? It has its own power feed, independent of Nuestra. "They're not talking," Roldan said. "Stay focused on the problem. Are the power feeds coming from inside the dome or outside?" Carla asked. "Datapad, trace power feeds," I said. "Power is emanating from inside the domes," my datapad said. "Got that, Carla?" I said. "Checking on this end. Are you okay?" "I'm tired," I said. I checked my tools because I always carried them with me. I didn't have an insulated cutter with me. I'd never needed one before, but I used to have one, back at the Azul mines. "Datapad, what is the AI doing?" I asked. "Waiting for a signal," my datapad said. I've had it with being sick. I've had it with the Raiders. I've had it with whatever Tristan and Perlita did to my home. "Emilio, you won't get a lot of information from this AI because I'm burning it out," I said. "We need to know what they were using the airlock for," Emilio said. "To go in and out of the domes without anyone knowing. Datapad, burn out the AI and the motherboard. Fry the whole damn airlock. I don't want any more surprises," I yelled. "Focusing overload," my datapad said. "Rias, no," Emilio said. "I'll rebuild it, but this time it will work. Datapad, do it." The AI sparked, and smoke briefly flashed away into the vacuum. "AI now deactive," my datapad said. I sighed and removed the motherboard and the AI. With a hard-opened exterior door, a hard-closed interior door, this airlock was now useless until it was fixed. 4 AIs accounted for, 1 left, I said. "Did Tristan tamper with any other airlocks?" "Damn it, Rias," Emilio yelled. "We might have learned something from that, and you've destroyed the entire airlock while you shorted out the AI. How can we learn anything about what the Raiders were doing? Once again, you jumped in without consulting anyone. Hector was right. You don't listen, and you don't respect anyone's authority." "You saw what it did to Drendon," I said. "I didn't want that to happen to me or anyone else." "I've tried to help you, but—" Emilio started to say, and then he walked off. "Emilio, I'm sorry," I said. Emilio didn't say anything. "The man's furious with you," Roldan said. "I probably wouldn't talk to him for a while." "I try to do the right things, but everybody gets mad at me," I said. "Say you're sorry by fixing the airlock," Roldan said. "Tell me what you need, and I'll have South Dome Atmospherics bring it over." I gave him an inventory of what was needed, and while Roldan and I waited, I called Doc. "Doc, how's Drendon?" His voice choked as he spoke. His life signs stopped on the way over. He's on life support, and we'll know if he'll make it by morning. "That's good," I said. "I followed the conversation between you and Emilio. Rias, when will you learn?" Doc yelled. "You might have made the right decision, but you weren't the one to make it. That was Emilio's call. You did to him just like you did to Hector, and to Marcial, and your teachers, and to me, and everybody else. You went ahead and did what you wanted with no care for anyone else. Just like you did with me and my cart. You needed the metal, and you took it. Did you think that maybe I needed that cart? Did you think that Hector had things set up a certain way because that's how him and his crew like it? Did you ever ask Ian if you could make him an arm? Or Carla? Or anybody? That's why everybody gets annoyed with you." Once again, Doc was right. I never ask permission. I simply do what needs to be done. And I've made a lot of enemies by doing that. How many more lives can I wreck by the end of the day? "Doc, you should have left me in the coma, because I can't seem to do anything right," I said, and ended the connection. It took 3 hours to get the airlock functioning, and day mode had changed to night mode. I grabbed a plate of cookies from North Dome Food Court and went back to North Dome Atmospherics. Fortunately, nobody worked night shift, unless it was an emergency. I was alone. Everybody was mad at me. I had screwed up the airlock, screwed up Emilio's chance to find information, and Ian was gone. I did the only thing I could do right. I repaired things. Doc's cart was first. Once built, I took some time to etch designs in the sides and make it beautiful. Then I had to rewire the processor I was working on earlier. The parts required an oil bath, and some were too burned to be salvaged. Good thing I knew where the parts were. An hour later, I had the unit cleaned up and purring. As I set it on the end of my table, a middle-aged woman entered, a little bit shorter than me, brown hair, red highlights. She wore a utility spacer jumpsuit with "Swift Current" written above the heart. She was carrying a large module in a box that I could smell the burnt, from meters away. CNC told me that there was a guy around here that can fix antique parts, she said. This is it? I asked. Stopped working the moment we got out of jump space, she said. Probably stopped working before then, but it wasn't until you were out of jump space that you noticed, I said. I hobbled over, leaning on the table, picked up my data pad and held it over the part. Data pad, match part, and find specs. It made a holographic image of the part, then a list of numbers and values next to it. Her eyes widened a little, and she pointed at the numbers. Look at those tolerances. No wonder it didn't last. They built some of those older ships so well, it takes decades for them to wear out, I said. Your departure is probably tomorrow morning? As soon as the engine is fixed and all the crew are together, she said. The maintenance people gave us an estimate of sometime tomorrow. Give me an hour or so, and I'll see what I can do to get it working, I said. My data pad brought up the specs. It was 40 years old and would require custom everything. With my tools, I had the front cover removed, screws lined up, and was taking it apart and lining up the pieces in my usual order. This engine part had a lot of electronics, which makes sense because only an AI could make the final calculations needed for jump space. And it had kilometers of burnt wires. Still, a rebuild was a rebuild. The basic parts needed a good cleaning. I might have to remake a couple, but the old motherboard would be a problem. Modern boards were smaller. You've seen one of these before? She asked, noting the precise rows and columns I lined the pieces in. It's the first time. I removed more pieces and set them up. The entire unit would need a good cleaning. Oil bath, probably. A chemical solution might eat through the metal. This is just how I work. Some of the wires had frayed, but we had more of that type in one of the side bins. I hobbled over and grabbed it, plus a small vat for the oil bath. What's that? She gestured at the replica I had made. As I came back to my table, I picked it up. That's the Adi Shachar. My boyfriend, Ian, is a spacer, and when the raiders shot him down, he lost a friend. Ian loved that ship, and the people he served with became family. I made it as a memorial that might bring him, maybe them, a little closure. I was hoping we could have a memorial service out at Robinson's marker when his captain came back, I said. I tried to keep a soft smile even though my chest ached. That day would come soon, and Ian would leave. I set the replica down and returned to the engine part, and bent over it so the woman wouldn't see the pain on my face. She grimaced. I held up a little piece of metal covered with 12 names. I wanted to use something from the ship for the plaque. Most of the metal was contaminated, but I found this piece of hull plating that's safe. The woman didn't say anything, but picked up the Adi Shachar and turned it around. Sorry, I didn't mean to make this a depressing conversation, I said, resuming work on the engine module. To keep the sense of loss down, I lined the parts up in the vat and added a light oil to clean them up. I had to keep my hands and my mind busy. A couple pieces would need to be replaced. Come back in a couple of hours. I should have this finished. After she left, I activated the holoprojector in my data pad and pulled up a picture of what this part looked like, brand new. That's my goal. I dove into the project to keep from feeling the pain. Ian would leave soon. Our time was almost over. The night he got back, I'd have cold beer waiting in our apartment and have the food court make something special. Then I'd turn Ian's sensitivity to max. We'd have a night to celebrate. It took 30 minutes to custom cut the pieces I needed, clean the parts in the oil bath, and rewire part of the control leads. I was reassembling part of it when Doc and another man walked in. Hey, Doc, your cart's done, I said, and nodded at it. I used a more durable metal so it could hold at least double what it could. The metal I found was almost as shiny, and I built a small raised border around the edge so things wouldn't fall off. I hobbled up, checking the oil bath and pulling out the parts and setting them back into rows. Rias, you're easy to get mad at, but I can't stay mad at you for very long, Doc said, and walked to the cart. He rolled it a little, touched the filigree designs, and smiled. Rias, I can't use that. It's too nice. I know I should have stopped by medical tonight, but you had Drendan to take care of, I said. And with everybody mad at you, you wanted to be alone. How many years have I known you? Doc said. Thank you. I'm going to have to forgive you for every time you made me mad. I still think you're the worst patient in Nuestra, and I warned my colleague about you. I'd like to present Dr. Tanaka of Bentley-Thwaite Medical Research and Development. He has an idea that might interest you." "Call me Rias." "It's a pleasure, Dr. Tanaka," I said, wiped my oily hand on a rag and offered it. No matter what the project, I couldn't stay clean. Dr. Tanaka shook my hand anyway. "Your case has many intriguing elements, which we have a solution for." "Do you mind if I work on this engine part while we talk?" I said, sliding a couple of stools their way. "It's for the ship that just came in." They sat around my table. Doc looked at the replica, and Dr. Tanaka pulled out his datapad. "I have some images I would like to show you." "Do you mind?" I asked. "Datapad. Sync with Dr. Tanaka's datapad. Project the images holographically and record, please." "Good Lord, Rias, you and that damn datapad," Doc said, setting the replica down. "Dr. Tanaka, now you'll begin to see why we are so annoyed with him." The images appeared in the air above my datapad. "An interesting invention. We have taken the ideas of the diabetic nanite implants and converted them to your case. However, your situation requires industrial-level nanites, normally used in heavy manufacturing," Dr. Tanaka said. "Everything else has only slowed the deterioration, not reversed it," Doc said. At this, Dr. Tanaka smiled. "We're not planning on reversing it. We believe we can reconstruct your marrow out of artificial materials. That's what makes your case so unique. You'll be the first recipient in human history to have a completely artificial marrow. It will make the nanite equivalent of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, plus a special type of progenitor cell that will maintain and stabilize your circulatory system, in effect, rebuilding the endothelial layer that lines your arteries." "This sounds impossibly expensive," I said. "Oh, it is. But what we can learn from you might revolutionize medicine. You'll be our first test subject," Dr. Tanaka said. "How long will it take?" I asked. "The initial setup will take 6 hours, but the procedure will last a week," Dr. Tanaka said. "A week?" I said. "Your bone marrow is non-existent, and what we propose will turn your bones into miniature artificial blood factories. It's not a simple nanocuff or blood transfusion. It's far more complicated. And if it works, it will be a permanent solution," Dr. Tanaka said. "Tell him the downside," Doc said. The woman who came in before entered, followed by another woman. They saw us and waited at the side of the room. "Downside?" I asked. Dr. Tanaka flipped through a couple of screens and my datapad displayed it. "Rias, I won't hide the truth. There are 3 that we know of. The first is that you will require daily monitoring, which could change as your situation improves. It might become weekly or monthly eventually, but not in the beginning." "That's no different from right now," I said. "The second is that the implants are very sensitive to energy and radiation discharges, meaning no jump gates and jump space," Dr. Tanaka said. I gave a sarcastic grin and said, "Instead of being temporarily jump negative and dying, I'll be permanently jump negative with a chance to live." "Rias, I know you wanted to go to college at Campbell Station, and your dad told me you wanted to be a pilot and travel the stars. I'm sorry, but you'll have to give up those dreams," Doc said. The second woman inhaled slightly, and she quickly held the first woman's hand. "The choice made me sad. It meant there was no way I could ever go to college, fly, or even leave Nuestra. Why would a talented pilot like Ian even want to stay with me? He wouldn't." "What's the third downside?" I asked. Dr. Tanaka's face went from serious to deadly serious. "I don't think I'm going to like the next downside. When the pain and stress was too much, I had to build. I took the remaining parts from the oil bath and wiped them down. Only 2 would have to be rebuilt. With a marker, I drew them out on a heavier piece of metal. But my hand trembled. The line wasn't perfect. It had bumps in it." Dr. Tanaka glanced at Doc before he continued. "There is a chance your body might not handle the procedure, or your body would recover, but your brain would burn out. These aren't like diabetic or birth control implants. They are much stronger. If we set them too high... That scared me. My hand shook, and I set the piece I was cleaning down so I wouldn't damage it. Dr. Tanaka nodded. I've studied your file in depth, and I ask that you trust me. I have calculated the proper settings, and I believe the risks are minimal. Some choice, I said. Death, jump negative, or permanent coma. When do I have to decide? Immediately. My team is preparing medical as we speak, Dr. Tanaka said. Rias, we didn't come only to inform you of the process, but to bring you to medical, Doc said. We want to begin immediately, because this is a long process, Dr. Tanaka said. I want to talk to Ian first, I said. I kept my hands flat on the table so no one would see them shake. I know you two love each other, but he is not scheduled to be back for another day, Doc said. Oh my God, Rias. I had hoped you had gotten better, the second woman said, and stepped over and hugged me. Do you ever regret saving our lives? I am sorry we brought you so much pain. I looked at her as a coldness descended down my spine. It couldn't be. Was this Captain Rohan? Doc looked up at the two women and smiled. Captain Rohan, Maggie Carruthers, it's good to see you again. I take it you're the new captain and engineer on the Swift Current? I held onto the table as the universe collapsed around me. Ian's captain had come for him. When she left tomorrow, Ian would go with her and travel the stars, like he always wanted. At that time, Dr. Tanaka would attempt the experimental procedure to save my life. I'd never get to say goodbye to the man I love. Pain I had not felt since my dad died throbbed through my skull, my chest, my heart. I'd never see my lover again. Thanks for listening. Let's talk datapads, particularly what makes Rias' datapad unique. Think of a datapad as a laptop and a phone combined that has all memory stored in the cloud. In order to work, it has to access an AI, in this case, Madre. If the power went out, say goodbye to your laptop and phone, at least until the power came back on. They become, well, they're basically paperweights. Rias' datapad is different because it has its own AI and its own internal storage. It doesn't matter if the power goes out. It can still sync with other AIs and function like normal. Yes, Rias backups his data on Madre, but his system is independent. It can call for gravlifters or interact with anything in range. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week for the next chapter. Peace.